Good morning. Welcome back. What I'm showing on my screen right now, what you should be able to see is what is social capital and why you should care about it. That's the focus of this week. What we're going to be talking about a lot is gambling. I'm going to gamble with you. I'm going to buy you guys a beer or drink, whatever you want. I want you guys to gamble with me and pick one in order to get success. If I could give you a lottery ticket for you have one thing and you have unlimited amount of it, would or an extra large amount of it, would that lottery ticket, for example, if I give you an extra amount of natural talent, would that make you very successful? Or if I give you an abnormal amount of intelligence, would that make you successful? Or education, or effort, or luck, or even money, or friends? What would you think would help you win the lottery of success? I'm going to be talking to you about that later, but we're going to review all of these things first and then get into Guanxi. And then at the end of class, perhaps before or after the other group talks, I would like you guys to talk to me about that. So, Jamamun, can I rely on you to make sure the class does that gambling with me today?
Got it.
Great. So, for the review, I just wanted to point out a couple of things. In our first week, the first PPT ever, you may have noticed I gave a crazy amount of PPTs. Well, these PPTs are basically valid for the first full month or 2 months of topics. We talked about many different management theories. We talked about how you must understand people don't learn about other people naturally. They're born parochial, only understanding one. And then even if they study in university about a different culture, like Brazilian culture or Argentinian culture, they don't really know them, and they may just think they're strange or inferior or bad. You usually think your own culture is better, and that's called ethnocentrism. And then we got into the idea of self-reliance criterion or self-reference criterion. Relying on what you know could be bad. So we started talking about those. We identified culture. We went through, again, the parochialism, ethnocentrism, the SRC, what culture is, cultural dimension examples. We went through how culture can be identified. I hope that you guys are clear on this slide. We know culture can be identified by Hofstede, but also Hall and Cluckhorn, Strodbeck, Trompenaar, Schwartz, the Globe Project. And as we identified earlier, Hofstede identified power distance and individualism and uncertainty avoidance and masculinity. Those things, those four dimensions of cultures are a very good way to identify national cultures, but we've already identified that some countries have many, many, many cultures inside the one nation. So although Hofstede is great, he's not perfect. He's wrong in some ways. And then we identified Hall is another person that identifies culture by high context or low context communications. And Cluckhorn and Strodbeck have a variety of different things, Trompenaar, Schwartz, Globe. If you have any questions about any of those things, let me know. Then we started talking more about cultural mistakes. That was kind of a fun example. We talked about many people in the world talk about how Max Weber and Karl Marx are gods in business or in economics. They're talking about how nations develop, but while he is very good with some aspects, they've identified that countries often follow the country's religion and economic development is related. What they said was that the Indian and Chinese and Korean culture will not develop very fast because they're just group oriented and that's too slow, or they're focused on other things. They're focused on the Confucian ethic, not the Protestant ethic that many people in the West are focused on. That was kind of interesting to talk about, especially about how we can now easily argue that they're wrong. Not many people say Max Weber or Karl Marx is wrong, but it should be pretty easy for you to argue those things. You could talk about that in a class project. And then went through a bunch of different examples of how they're different. Then we talked about student culture. And I reminded you about the student culture specifically for our class. The idea of, let me get some of that stuff a little bit bigger so you can see it. So most students, they work hard. They try to impress the teacher. They try to get a good grade, but they don't actually look at the big picture. In the art of war, you must understand not only yourself or your enemy or your team, but you must understand the terrain and what's going on around you, your environment. So look at the environment, look at how you may want to work with certain companies, and try to start developing connections immediately. Don't just wait until you graduate. A top mark, 90% or an A plus or 100% mark in a class, it's nice when you're young, but when you get older, you realize that not too many people really care about that. It's better to have that bigger, broader look, which we talked about in the art of war, and understand what is your planning, what is your main goal, start working towards that. The whole class is set up that way, how you could even sell some of the university research papers to companies, or give that information to companies to develop connections in order to help get a job, or if you present it in a presentation, or even better, in a report, that would, if you do it properly, almost guarantee an internship for you, if not a good job. And when you are doing it, I was showing one of Hofstede's papers, which was very short. I believe it's about 8 pages long, and he referenced 2 books and a survey of 25 students, and he referenced himself, I think, more than 10 different times. That type of thing is really, really smart. He doesn't teach management, but if you look at what he's doing, it is really, really smart. And then we talked about how you can do that in class. We talked about the art of war. We got into what those things are. We also talked about how some people say the world operates in a certain way. For example, Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean 1492 and he discovered North America, is what many people say. However, other people say that there's a Chinese group that sailed the world 70 years before Christopher Columbus, and they actually have many, many tents and camping areas and villages that they used in North America, being identified even today, that are much older than Christopher Columbus. So today we're focused on social capital, and I want to talk to you guys about it, but I also want to remind you, you must understand, before you understand anything else, who are you, what is your culture, and then the culture of other people, and then the idea of how wealth is a culture, how technology is a culture. You should be working with that, and if you don't understand it, how you can learn almost anything online for free. And even how Facebook, many people are using Facebook, but they use it wrong. Only if you understand the Facebook management aspects, like the Facebook analytics or Facebook insights programs, you get much, much better results, as we see here with the Google Insights. So that was all just week 1. Week 2, talked about the art of war, and we went through it. If I zoom in on this a little bit more. So it's similar to what we talked about in week 1. We went into a little bit more details, and we started explaining about what was the art of war, how it was certain theories written down on something like small chopsticks tied together, since it happened 2,500 years ago, before the idea of paper and books and things like that, what those things were, what was the art of war philosophy number 1 and 2 and 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, up to the idea that there's 13 different chronicles or principles or aspects to learn with the art of war. And then we finished the class, if we look at it, with this slide, talking again about social capital. So that's what we're talking about today. Before I get into this too much, I started, and Jung-Ho has something that he wants to remind the class about, right, Jung-Ho? The idea, what did I ask you to argue with me about?
You told me that make sure that our class gambles together.
Yes. Wow, we really must. I have to watch my words very carefully. I'm not trying to teach you to gamble. I want you to gamble and argue or debate with me about what? What is the secret to success? That's what I want you guys to argue with me about. And so this week we're talking about a topic, but before we get into that, if we look at this week 4, this Guanxi Social Capital.
Professor,
Yes,
can our team give the presentation today now?
sure, yes. Whenever you guys are ready to talk about it. Who is interested in controlling the PPT?
Maybe I should.
Okay, so I will make UNO the co-host. You can share details now. While you're getting ready, again, I wanted to ask everybody, what does it take to be successful? If I can give you one thing to help you be successful, what would it be? If you could have lots of money or lots of intelligence, what would you choose? What's one thing that could help you be successful? We'll talk about that after this team describes characteristics of Guanxi.
So may I present the presentation, because I was supposed to present it, but I do not know if someone else wants to present it because it wasn't working at the start, so we didn't really communicate.
If I tell you no, are you going to listen to me?
It was more like a question for my team.
And if your internet drops, we'll just jump in.
Right. Please be bold. Be confident. Every one of you. Go ahead.
Okay, so we would like to present today Guanxi, which is, it comes from China, and it is a social capital theory. And it's about the importance of social culture, networking, and relationship in business management. Next slide, please.
Okay, so maybe I'll just take over.
Great, thank you, Pira.
Okay, yeah, it comes from Confucianism, and it's basically the principle that nobody should be isolated. And Guanxi tells or talks about how individuals, businesses, and the government interact and what can be achieved because of connections to other people. The basics to Guanxi is that you should be dependable, trustworthy, and respectful. And there are different spectrums to Guanxi. If we understood this correctly, you could either share public information, then personal information, which is a bit more intimate. There could also be favors or corruption. This is a bit of the negative sides. And we wanted to ask the class, maybe you could show the next slide, please. Can you think of different ways to build connections, or have you maybe profited from Guanxi before?
I can.
Yeah, okay.
But you guys should go first.
Okay, so anybody, can anybody think of ways to build connections? Maybe Jung-Ho, for example?
I'm not sure if I completely understand this question. Like different ways to build connections?
Yeah, just if you maybe, for example, want to get a job, who could you ask or what could you do to get in contact with people?
I think first of all, I will think about what I really want to do. Well, for my my case, my final goal is becoming a pilot, and I have met one friend who's working in Manila aviation company, and I might ask him to look for some job options. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, that was a great example. Anybody else? So we have friends for one thing, that ways to build connections. Maybe Ulufbek, do you have an idea?
We can also connect with others with our works. Maybe like, as professor said, we may prepare some articles for some company, and I think we may make a connection with that company.
Yeah, so coworkers, that's also a great idea. Okay, anybody else? I think the rest are all my teammates. Professor, you had an example?
Of Guanxi, what are different ways to build connections?
Yeah.
Energy, trying, putting yourself out there. I have lived and worked in many countries around the world. I've worked with 128 different countries around the world. And when I was younger, people were wondering, how could I have so many friends in different areas? Because most people, they only have their best friend in the area where they grow up. And then they go and they travel to a different area and they may meet somebody and be friendly with somebody, but there's a difference between being friendly with somebody and actually being real friends. And so they forget the idea of the investment you have made in the friends from elementary school or middle school, high school, university. Most people forget that if you grew up with somebody and that person is your best friend, they forget how many years have you been alive? How many years have you been beside that other person? How many years have you been having lunch or drinks or playtime with that other person? All of that time is an investment. So when you go to a new area and you want to build connections or you want to build Guanxi, you need to invest that time with these other people, even if you're not really comfortable with it. And so if you do that and start building connections, investing time with these other people, even if you don't like doing it, those people can show you around better or give you more benefits than if you're just a tourist or just passing through. I'm not sure if it was clear about the benefits of Guanxi, but I can give many different examples. Maybe that was a little complex.
No, thank you. Okay, yeah, maybe you can just go to the next slide. So,
So there are some characteristic of Guanxi in business. First, speaking about it, it relies on individual social connections rather than business relations with official business relations with other businesses. In unlike Western business connections, and it relies on individual and more local like social connections, and it takes advantage from large Guanxi group in business. So having a large Guanxi relations will help business in Chinese business management. It also has tight reciprocity relations, which is called Bao. The reciprocity means that one gives a favor to you, and the reciprocity, who received the reciprocity has to pay the favor back to the person. But it does not have to be so quick or instance. Unlike strict Western business ethic, it focuses on private intimacy and it doesn't need a lot of time. It doesn't need a lot of something like strict business ethic, but local private relations. But these kind of reciprocity must be kept. But if this reciprocity is not kept in Chinese business relations, that person is has hard time in managing Chinese business relations.
okay, yeah, there was a bit of a miscommunication. This was supposed to be the answer slide for our question. Just to sum up some ways to build Guanxi again. We had family, friends, classmates, coworkers. There could also be the possibility of locality, general knowledge of an industry, conscious efforts, and also, like Uno said, formal introductions and gifts could help. Yeah, so that's it. We put an example video here, but it's a bit long, so we don't think we'll play it. It's just in case somebody didn't understand anything at all, so then we could play it.
What if I don't understand? Can you play the first few seconds just to get a taste for it? And,
yes, we could play it.
it looks like you're almost finished. Did you want to continue or say anything else? I have several questions.
No, we just have our references at the end. Yeah.
I have one more thing to add. I just found a video yesterday, but it is really long. It is like 16 minutes, so I will just post it into the chat. And also, when Professor was talking about having connections in different places, once again, I will post it into the chat. And it is just a website where I personally found, I think that probably every single one of my friends. So right now, my best friend is from Iran, for example, and in my home country, I have just one friend. And it was, for me, it was really helpful, for example, when I came to Korea, because I already knew what to expect a little bit. And my friends are showing me around the city where I am. So I think that it can be also really helpful for you.
And the link to that is going to be in the chats you're talking about. Okay,
Yes.
great. Any other comments that you had before I'm allowed to jump in? So we just heard from one team. How about Ulukbek? You are in a different team. You are not in the presenting team today. Can you give a couple of comments about what we just heard? What do you agree with? What do you not agree with? What do you find interesting? What do you think these guys are full of crap about?
Actually, it's the first time to know about Guanxi, and I think I will try to learn a lot of information from team 2.
Okay, Thomas, you're in that group. What? And I think Jazzer, you're in the group. I didn't hear from you guys too much. Is there anything special that you found especially interesting about this topic?
Oh, hello, Professor. I'm sorry for not joining the group project. I'm at the hospital. I emailed you about this. So I'm not doing the group project for a while, but I will arrive Korea on 29th. So I will be participating in the group project from that moment, if that's okay. Because the connection here at the hospital is not that good, and I don't have my PC here. So, but I have I have a comment for this topic, the Guanxi. Isn't it kind of connected with the corruption? Because if you have connections to let's say my dad has a connection with the company's director, and he wants me to help me to work at that company by using his connections. Would that be a type of corruption?
Good question. Anybody in class, is Guanxi bad? Is, as I believe I heard you say today, somebody said that using other people, where I was brought up in Canada, the idea of using somebody is usually considered bad. So what about for this topic? Do you guys, now that you're specialists in the topic, do you think it's good or bad to use other people?
Well, in the video that I posted into the group chat, the lady was talking about that it is basically that it is like people in China are so used to it that it is not illegal, or maybe that it is illegal, but it is so accepted in the society that no one really thinks about it. But of course, the highest level is corruption, which is illegal and it shouldn't be really done.
Why?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Pia.
No, I just wanted to say I agree. But it's also, I think that the whole concept is giving and receiving. So it's very important if you ask for a favor to always be able to return it. So I read that if in, for example, China, you're not able to return the favor that someone else gave you, you're almost like socially shunned, and it's really bad for you.
And related to that concept, somebody was just saying that the developed idea is that you're not supposed to do it. You're not supposed to have that corruption. But okay, let's look backwards about this, because I want to talk about so many aspects about this. What is developed? Are you going to, if you can pick one or two countries, which country is developed? Anybody, yell out a country.
US.
Okay, the US is developed. So what happens if somebody has an agreement and they don't follow the agreement? What happens then?
Then it's a breach of contract.
So what happens? You fight, right? You go to court, you ask specialists, you pay a crazy amount of money to lawyers, and then you pay more money to judges and courts to manage your fight. Basically, in the old days, it was a fist fight. Now you fight intellectually with paper, but it's still a legal fight. Is that good? Who wins? Has anybody heard of the case of O.J. Simpson and the murder of, what was it, his wife, Jessica Simpson? Anybody hear about that? How he got off? How did he get off? What about Donald Trump and his universities? And there's so many different universities in the United States, the developed country, that makes people pay a crazy amount of money and then doesn't really give them anything. But the students don't win those legal fights. So my question again is, in the advanced country, the best way is to follow some way of doing things. And if it doesn't work, you have to go to another system, the legal system. But how is that system controlled? I'm not asking if it's fair or not. I'm just asking, what is the system? Who usually wins a court fight, a legal fight? Isn't it whoever has the most money? Whoever has the most money has the best lawyers, the most lawyers. And then maybe you guys don't know about it, but I teach some parts of law. If you do go to court, and God forbid you don't, but you could almost prevent the other side from getting to court by simply arguing they used the wrong paper, or they used the wrong comma, or they didn't have the proper title. Seriously, a lot of courts will throw your case out or delay your case if you make those simple mistakes. And then you could argue about a variety of other things. So even before you get in front of a judge. So I'm not saying it's right or wrong. Hopefully you will have better experiences. But what I'm trying to say is, you're saying using people is the undeveloped way or the corrupt way. And so I think I'm hearing you say the US way is that fair? Is having a system focused on money better than a system where you just rely on a feeling, an exchange, a gut relationship? Anybody want to
I
make
think
comments about that?
both sides are not fair.
Okay, good. Life's not fair. Good. The sooner you learn that, the better. Life is a game, but can I hear a little bit more about it?
I mean, at least in the other system, the way you described it, everyone has the same chance.
Which other system?
Not the one relying on money, the one relying on favors.
All right, so we're looking at the corrupt, undeveloped system is what Pia is voting for. Pia, come on, are you voting for cavemen and, oh, God forbid, Chinese? Oh, no! Really? Well, look, Beck, do you hear what she's saying? Is she drunk? She doesn't want to believe in courts and lawyers and following the law? What happens in this old caveman Chinese system? And by the way, I don't want to offend any Chinese listening. This is just for example. What happens in the Chinese system? If you argue, if somebody takes money from you or gets a favor from you and then doesn't pay you back, in the US system, you take them to court. and whoever has the most money can sue the poorer person, usually pretty easily. Sometimes you could be fair. It could be fair. But we have seen examples like O.J. Simpson and Donald Trump, where if you have money, you can get your own way. So that is the lawyer system, the court system, the legal system. Well, what happens in China if you don't follow your agreement?
I think they will just cut the connection or take a revenge.
Okay, good guess. They will cut the connection or take revenge. What does that mean? Can you explain a little more?
For example, if someone doesn't give me back my favor, I would just literally just cut the connection with them and not trust them anymore, because I feel like in Eastern in Chinese culture, the trust between people are important. So I feel like they would just cut the connection or not trust them anymore.
Jung Moon, you in my video screen are right beside Yasser, and let's say that Yasser borrows your homework one day and he promises to give you his homework one day, but then he doesn't. In North America, maybe you could sue him. But according to him, if he just stops talking to you, are you going to care? Is that all Guanxi is? Is that all the Chinese system is? Is it just stop talking to him?
I think it is kind of not following a Guanxi is not accepted from the society, I think.
Okay, so if Yasser, if he borrows your class notes and says he's going to give you a free dinner or buy you a beer, but then after he gets your notes and takes photos of them, and then he doesn't buy you the dinner, what Yasser was talking about is he could just stop talking to you, or you could stop talking to him, and that's the end of it. But what you said is society gets involved. It's not just the two people, it's society, you and him and everybody else. How do other people, how would Pia care? How would UNO care?
I think that I think Korean something like social network has similar aspect to the Guanxi system, and if this happens, the person who has other connections with the someone who borrowed the note to me might spread something like bad rumors or for someone the others to give social disadvantage to me, and so that's how the society could be involved to give disadvantage to me. I think that.
Okay, so I'm going to assume UNO and Jung Moon and Yasser, I assume you're all very confident, very happy guys. You will play a game with me, and you're not going to feel bad if we start using crazy examples. They're not true examples. So if Yasser borrows a motorbike of Jung Moon and says he's going to buy a dinner for being able to use the motorbike, and then he doesn't buy the dinner, the first idea we have is that Jung Moon stops talking to Yasser. Okay, that's one thing. And then what UNO said, what I understand is Jung Moon could tell Pia and UNO and other people that Yasser is a bad guy. Stay away from him. Is that what you're saying? Because in Korea, Yasser could sue Jung Moon and make Jung Moon go to jail for 7 years for defamation just by saying he's bad. You know that? That is the Korean system. That's defamation law. And after Jong Un goes to jail for 7 years for harming the image of Yasser, then Yasser could sue Jong Un for $1,000 or $10,000 for personal damage. So Yasser, cha-ching, you could get a motorbike and. Is that what we worry about? Because that is the real system in Korea now. So you were talking about the Chinese system of Guanxi, and we brought in the Korean system, which is related. It's basically the same thing. So why should we care about society? Thomas, can you?
Because the rumors are we
I
can.
would say that the society can help us.
How? How could society help us?
So that like we could go to jail and stuff, that the society is not just like for a certain period of time, but it would take like much more time for the society to trust us again. And it could like really harm us in like the really long way that we, I don't know, wouldn't be able to get a job possibly, or no matter what would we need from anybody, they would just not help us because they would know that we will not return the favor. So it wouldn't be worth it for them.
Okay, now we're talking. But forgive my language, but isn't that bullshit, Thomas? Is that real? Is that the way life works? Is that what you see in Korea?
Well,
Is
I
that
would
what you
say
see in
that
China?
I don't know how in China or Korea, but I have or had maybe a friend, and he kind of did something that he shouldn't have done. And since then, not many people are really talking to him, or they do not believe him when he wants help with something. And when they hear that someone who basically doesn't know about the guy, the things that we do, they usually tell him, so they are able to help the person to kind of like harm the person that harmed us.
Okay, thank you. We're getting deeper. We're starting to understand more of the system. And again, I am teaching Chinese management. But what I'm also teaching, although Guanxi came from China 2,500 years ago, and it's the art of war, Chinese management, and Guanxi is definitely Chinese management. I am trying to teach you that it works everywhere. Let's take a look. The US system. Everybody understands you just hire a lawyer. You can hire a lawyer anywhere. They should be all over the place, especially at the bottom of the ocean, but they should be all over the place. What do you do in China? What do you do with the Korean system? How do, let's say, Tuang is new to Korea, and she doesn't really know Yasser, and she doesn't really know Jung Ho-moon or UNO, or she doesn't know Thomas. How could she find out if one of the students is good or bad? Is there a way to find out? Is there a system? Is there a book that tracks people?
Well, I would say that one of the ways is just to ask people around that know him to make sure.
Okay, good.
What if these days even on the internet, especially when, for example, like
I think your sound cut off. Pia, do I understand correctly that you're from Germany? Is that correct? And Jung Ho-moon, have you ever been to Germany?
Yes, for 5 months.
Okay, and I think I've heard maybe you've also been to Jakarta, right? So these are two cities very far away from where we are now. Are there any Chinese there?
You can find them everywhere.
Yes. So how do you find them? What is one way that you can quickly and easily find Chinese business people in almost any city in the world. English people, the US people, are trying to copy that system, and they have a similar system, but most English people don't understand how it really works yet. So again, I ask you the basic question. What is the system where you find out about what society says about people, specifically Chinese? If you go to Frankfurt or if you go to Jakarta, there is a committee, there is a group of people where you can find out about them. What's that called?
Can I say something about that?
Sure.
If you go to any countries around the world, if you want to find the Chinese community, so you can go to the Chinatown.
You can go to Chinatown, yes, but even better than Chinatown, there is a more, it's good, there's a Chinese community almost everywhere. And there's, in many places, there's a Koreatown, much smaller, but yes. But sometimes there isn't a clear Chinatown, but there is usually still a formal group, a formal society.
Are you talking about the embassy?
Yes, but Chinese have developed it so well that they don't really need the embassy. Yes, United States uses the embassy in almost every major city. The embassy or the consulate will be around, and that is your society representation to help tell you who is doing the sales, who is doing the distribution, who's the doctors or the lawyers, or who are the people. They introduce you to the valuable people. Almost every country in the world has that. But the Korean system, the embassy is actually kind of small. And for the Chinese, it's also, there's something else more important. What is that more important society that everybody knows of? Anybody heard of the CCC, like Canadian Chamber of Commerce or American Chamber of Commerce, Chinese Chamber of Commerce, or business community? When you go to almost any city in the world, there are chambers of commerce. All that is just a collection of business people working together. And they will have information about who are the lawyers or the judges or the police officers or the suppliers for your product or distributors or manufacturers. They'll have information about everything and be able to say, this guy is the best. And this guy is also pretty good. And then this, they will have that society information. Most people don't use it as well as people that are very good with the Guanxi. That Chamber of Commerce is the 2021-2022 version of Guanxi. If you go to a new city, you don't know anybody. And so if Pia is trying to come to Seoul and set up operations to make a whole new company here, she came from some city in Germany on the other side of the planet. How can she come and do successful business here? Even before she comes, she could still be in Frankfurt and talk to the German Chamber of Commerce. Or if she was Chinese, talk to the Chinese Chamber of Commerce here in Korea and find out who is working in her area, or who are potential customers, or who could represent her. All of that information, all of that Guanxi secret information is usually provided through those chambers of commerce immediately. And then as soon as you come to the country, if you start participating in their drinking events or activities, you become a lot closer, and they'll give you a lot more of the secret information that they don't want to say publicly because of defamation laws. You can get a lot of information. And if somebody steals your motorbike and that society, that Chamber of Commerce finds out about it, they will basically stop you from doing business. You will become, in Korea, it's called wangda. You're an outsider, you're a foreigner, you're a freak. And if you are that outsider, wangda, everybody, even elementary school children, middle school children, everybody will start making fun of you and they won't associate with you. That's built into Guanxi. And it's 2021, 2022. It's not just the Art of War 2,500-year-old system.
May
Yeah,
I have
sir.
a question?
Yes, go ahead.
I wanted to ask, like, isn't it really hard to get into, like, for example, to start drinking with them or like get into some kind of connection? Aren't they like really protective of the group?
Yes, they are, but don't forget, which country are you from, Thomas?
Czech Republic.
Okay, why don't you start by joining the Czech Chamber of Commerce or the International Chamber of Commerce? Soon as you start joining your chamber, they will introduce you to the friendly Chinese. If for some reason you want to do business with Chinese, that your society, even though it's completely new to you, they will allow you in. Sometimes you have to pay a membership fee, but they'll start giving you some information for free, and they will introduce you to people in the other chambers of commerce. You don't have to join. If you're from Czech, you don't have to join the Chinese Chamber of Commerce, but you can. Why should you? Let's ask, any questions about that so far? I'm trying to make sure you are aware that everyone has Guanxi network around you now. The successful people know it and use it. The people that are not successful, they don't know about it and they don't use it. That's why they're not successful. So you can start using your network, for example, with the Chamber of Commerce. And if you need to, you could use lawyers, but I highly argue don't do that. Try to settle things within the group, following the group's style to resolve things. And if some powerful, let's say that Thomas and Ulugh are arguing about who used the motorbike and didn't pay for it, if Thomas allows himself to sort of be cheated by Ulugh and UNO and Jong Moon see that Thomas doesn't really complain, and let's say Jong Moon is the most successful business person in this community, in this city, maybe he's quiet, but he's watching that activity. He's watching that society. He's watching what's going on in Guanxi. And there's a very good chance that Jong Moon might give like $1 million loan to Thomas because he sees you're a good guy. You didn't create a problem, even though you had a headache. And so other people, especially the most successful people, are kind of obligated to help the people at the bottom that have problems. UNO, can you explain that system in Korea? It's not just China. In Korea, the most successful people in society are usually the government, like the president of the country, and then CEOs of companies, and then directors or professors and students. There's a hierarchy, and that creates the Guanxi network. But who is helping the poor guy at the bottom? When you go out for a dinner, when you go out for drinking, does the poor guy have, even though the poor guy wants to network with Thomas, if you go with the professor, does the poor guy pay or do the professors pay? Does the CEO pay?
Actually, my dad has a lot of something like business dinner, which is in Korea called 회식. And in this kind of 회식, this workers at the lower level get involved and eat dinner, and something like employees or workers at the higher level get pays for the dinner at the dinner meeting. And that's what my dad say about it. He pays a lot of money for the 회식 thing and
So-
something like business meetings.
So the successful people usually pay to take care of the low or younger, unsuccessful people often in a regular situation. However, there are times if you want to grow in that Guanxi, if you want to go from a low level, if you want to become more successful, you should invest to grow your Guanxi, to grow your value. For example, grow your ability to have capital, bank capital. And so if you have a huishik or a company dinner, you can invite many people to this company dinner and you buy them food, you buy them drinks, even if you're not very rich. If you do that, everybody that comes will take drinks and food from you, but soon as it's finished or during that meal, they're supposed to be thinking of how they can help you. So once it's finished, even though you pay to get into it, all of those people will be helping you. Mr. Moon, you had a comment?
I can share one of the ways to build Guanxi as a Korean living in America. So the first thing that a lot of Koreans do is joining church society. So as soon as they go to America as immigrants or as a businessman.
Oh my God, Ulugh, Thomas, Pia, listen carefully. You probably have heard of what is a church. You know the little thing like a cross and some dead guy on a cross, and you know that some people have this book that they read, but forget that and now listen to what Mr. Moon is going to be talking about. Okay, what is this idea of church and why do people go there? Why is it important? Continue, Mr. Jong Moon.
So even though you're not that religious,
say that one more time.
Even though not that you're religious, most of the Koreans kind of they think, oh,
have to. If you don't go, you're wangta. Remember that? That means.
So for me also, I haven't gone to church for a long time, but for the first thing that I did in America was going to church and joining the society. And I got to know a lot of people, Koreans living around me. And if you see the newspaper of the church, there's so much advertisements that say a lawyer. If you need a lawyer, go to here, doctor, go to here, dentist here. So you have all the connections if you go to church, Korean church in America. So I think that's one of the way that Koreans living in America can build a Guanxi by going to church.
Absolutely. Make sure you understand that. And that's that's not just Korea. If we're talking international business, what corporation or what organization is one of the wealthiest in the world? The church, right? So be aware that Guanxi, I don't want to say anything bad about religion. I don't want to say anything bad about any cultures because their Guanxi is so important that they can ruin my life or ruin your life. But be aware that that Chamber of Commerce or the embassy and a consulate and churches are incredibly helpful for you to start growing your Guanxi or getting connections. We only have about 5 minutes left of class. Any questions about what we just said? Anybody want to argue? I want somebody to argue with me. I want somebody to say, bullshit, old man. You just work hard. You get good grades. You will be successful. That's what my mom said. Anybody want to support my mom? My mom is a great lady. I want to argue with her. Somebody help me argue with her. Pia, you're about to say something?
No, I just have a question. Is that system really still working in China? Because I think there are a lot of rich people
my
in
God!
China. Yeah,
I used to respect you.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to
there are
close
probably a lot of rich people in China as well that would be able to sue you or simply sue you if you don't return a favor. So is that not an option that they would take?
You could, yes, absolutely. There are lawyers everywhere in the world, but if you look at culture again, Korean culture, Chinese culture, Confucian culture is designed, Vietnamese culture also, you're designed to have harmony. Nobody is supposed to fight. Anybody that does fight is bad, not just for that one person, but everybody connected to you. Who is connected to you? Everybody in your company, everybody in your university, everybody in your high school and your middle school, your elementary school. Of course, everybody in your family will look bad if you fight, if you go to court. So take a look. Even though I told you the law in Korea, if you make somebody look bad, you could sue them and they could go to jail for 7 years, and then you could sue them for extra money afterwards. Even though that's true, not many people use that. I did research in the past. Do you know, in police stations, managing this Guanxi and suing people for jail time, the most applicants, the most court cases, the most complaints for this defamation are middle school children. My little Johnny said or heard that little Susie said he was stupid. I want you to punish her because my little Johnny, even though he's 7 years old, he's not stupid. He's just a little special. So most defamation applicants are middle school kids. It's crazy. The mature people that understand life, understand business, they understand you could use a lawyer, you can go to court, but usually you don't. That's the last resort. It's better to resolve things in the community and be very well connected. So if you are connected, even though two people are arguing, if you have a problem, everybody that's around you is going to know about that. And then all of these other people will also help get that other person that cheated you to come back and fix the problem. Otherwise, that person is going to be left alone. I wanted to point out, we're talking about Guanxi now, and you should understand it has developed from China, but it's used everywhere in the world, and it's not a bad thing. It's not an old thing. It survives like Sun Tzu's Art of War, hundreds and thousands of years, and it's incredibly valuable. The more we learn about these Chinese management or Asian management, the more successful we will be anywhere in the world, in my opinion. Let's take a look at I was going to ask several questions in class, but I think we've already answered them. Is Guanxi and corruption related? Is it bad? What could be a different view than thinking it's bad? I think Ulrich or Thomas started saying advanced countries don't do this bad thing. Advanced countries have lawyers and courts. But I hope I pointed out that that system is also not exactly fair. Did you realize that in Korea, traditionally, they didn't really have words for those meanings like fair, and there's a very structured community. So
재벌.
chaebol is another special thing. Chaebol is the huge corporation. That's another thing. Yes. So one of the questions I was trying to make sure that you had an answer is using other people bad? And as Pia said, as long as you understand it's not using people in the negative, you taking something and leaving them cheated, it's developing the relationship. For example, I am an introvert and I am not really comfortable holding hands with another person or putting my arm around another person. Sometimes in Korea, we go to a singing room, a noraebang, and other guys I'm working with, they will put their hand on my leg to develop the relationship. And I'm like, whoa! But that type of thing develops the relationships. And the more you can have those relationships, grow, the better. It's don't just take them and leave, but try to borrow something from somebody. Do it on purpose, even though you don't need it. Like borrow a pencil or borrow a textbook or borrow something small from somebody and then give it back to them a week later or a month later. Do it on purpose, because if you allow that person to help you, then they will think you're closer to them and you need to help them later. And you have a closer connection. And if you keep doing those things with many people, that is building your credit limit. Some of you may know in Germany there is a financial credit limit, which is not that important. It is a game also. If you start borrowing things and developing relationships with other people, using other people in a smart way, like use them and then pay it back, that is good. Another thing I wanted to talk about is, first, any questions about that? Like corruption is not exactly related to Guanxi, and using other people is not exactly bad. Is that clear? Beck, that's clear to you?
Yes, it's clear for me.
No questions? Okay, what about that next thing? I have been trying to tell you guys every class to use your Guanxi. When you speak, reference, but you don't. Pia, you gave a long presentation today, and I didn't hear you during one slide talk about your reference until your very last slide. And then you just showed it and stopped talking. You don't care, which means you don't care about Guanxi. Who cares about plagiarism? Yes, that's bad, but that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is the more you say you're getting information from somebody else, that person might want to help you. And somebody else that doesn't know you, but they know the other person, if they hear you're using that reference, they will respect you more also. So reference a lot. And then one of the final things, even if you do talk about it, what I said this in class, but you guys didn't, are all connections equal? Are they the same? Are all references equal? Are they the same? The answer is no. So why do you treat them like they're the same? Make sure you understand Guanxi. Make sure you understand using people is good. Make sure you understand referencing is important. And there's different values to it. So say, when you have the highest level, say it's the highest level. Anyway, any other questions? Class is finished.